23 million people. That's how many passengers flow through Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta every single month, through terminals built in the 1970s, using technology from the 1990s, while being screened by a security system that fails its own tests 95% of the time. American airports are getting worse. Not slowly, not subtly, measurably, undeniably worse. And if you've flown internationally in the last decade, you already know it. Today, we're breaking down exactly why. The broken funding, the airline monopolies, the security theater, and the choice, because it is a choice, to let our airports decay while the rest of the world builds the future. Let's dive in. Let's start with what you can see the moment you land. American airports are old, not charmingly vintage, not historically preserved, just old. LaGuardia opened in 1939, JFK in 1948, O'Hare's iconic terminals, 1963. These aren't just outdated, they're from a different era of aviation entirely, and we haven't meaningfully rebuilt them. Here's the thing, aging infrastructure isn't the problem by itself. The problem is what we've done with it, or rather what we haven't done. When Singapore opened Changi Airport in 1981, they didn't just maintain it, they constantly expanded, rebuilt, innovated. Terminal 4 opened in 2017. The Jewel, that 5-story garden with a waterfall in the middle, opened in 2019. They never stop improving because they understand something we've forgotten. Airports aren't just infrastructure, they're gateways. They're the first and last impression of your country. Look at Doha, Dubai, Seoul Incheon, Hong Kong. These airports were either built in the last 20 years or are constantly being renovated. They're designed for today's passenger volumes, using today's technology. American airports, we're pushing 3 times as many passengers through facilities designed for 1970s travel volumes. It's like trying to run a modern tech company on computers from 1985. The math doesn't work, the experience doesn't work, nothing works. But it's not just age, it's what that age reveals about our priorities, because while other countries were investing, we were doing something very different. Okay, so our airports are old. Why don't we just upgrade them? Because of how we fund airports, and this is where things get truly absurd. Most American airports are publicly owned but forced to operate like businesses. They have to generate revenue to fund improvements. But here's the catch. They can't charge airlines enough to actually do it. Why? Because airlines have massive lobbying power. They've negotiated sweetheart deals locking in low rates for decades. They fight every fee increase. So airports are left trying to make money from parking fees and overpriced Hudson News stores selling $15 bottles of water. Compare this to international airports. Many are government-run with direct government funding. When they need upgrades, the government funds them. Simple. Or they're privatized with strict service standards. You can run this airport, but it must meet these requirements or you lose the contract. America, we created a zombie hybrid. Public ownership means airports can't make hard business decisions, but we also refuse to fund them adequately, so they have to act like businesses anyway. It's the worst of both worlds. LaGuardia is the perfect example. Everyone knew it was a disaster. Joe Biden called it third world in 2014, a sitting vice president comparing our infrastructure to developing nations, and he wasn't wrong. They're finally rebuilding it. You know how? A complicated public-private partnership where private companies build terminals, then lease them back to the airport over 30 years. It costs more than direct public funding would have, but because we refuse to invest in infrastructure the straightforward way, this is what we do. And here's the cruel joke. The new terminals are nice, but the runways, the taxiways, the underlying infrastructure, still from the 1960s. You can put a new building on top of an old airport, but you're still operating an old airport. Meanwhile, airlines keep consolidating, and that's making everything worse. Here's what most people don't realize. American airports are getting worse because American airlines have gotten too powerful. In the 1980s, we had dozens of major airlines. Competition was fierce. If one airport sucked, airlines could threaten to move hubs. Airports had leverage. Today, 4 airlines: American, Delta, United, Southwest. That's it. And they've carved the country into territorial monopolies. Delta owns Atlanta. United owns Newark and Houston. American owns Dallas, Fort Worth, and Charlotte. These aren't just major customers, they're monopolies. If you're flying through these cities, you're flying their airline, or you're connecting somewhere else. This destroys airports' negotiating power. Delta can tell Hartsfield-Jackson, accept our terms or we cut flights, and Atlanta has no choice. Tell Delta to leave, the entire airport collapses, the city's economy collapses. So airlines dictate terms, lower fees, specific gates, blocking competitors, and airports comply because they have to. The result? Airports can't fund improvements, service degrades, but passengers don't have alternatives, so airlines don't care. Why improve service when you control the market? And when you have a captive market, customer service becomes optional. Have you tried to get help at an American airport lately? Good luck. Information desks, understaffed or non-existent. TSA lines, nightmares that snake through terminals. Flight delayed or canceled? You're on your own. Airlines have gutted customer service because where else are you going to go? Now compare Singapore Changi or Dubai or even Amsterdam Schiphol. Staff everywhere, clear signage, real-time information that actually works. If something goes wrong, there are people trained to help you. The experience is designed to be, at minimum, tolerable, at best, pleasant. American airports? You're cattle. The assumption is you're a potential threat until proven otherwise. There's no hospitality, no service culture, just processing. Get you through security, get you to the gate, get you on the plane. Efficiency without humanity. The design reflects this. Long corridors, minimal seating, harsh fluorescent lighting, every element designed for throughput, not comfort. Bathrooms are dirty because there aren't enough cleaning staff. Water fountains barely work because maintaining them isn't a priority. Food options are identical chains, Starbucks, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, because airports lease to whoever pays the highest rent, which is always national chains. International airports treat passengers like customers. American airports treat us like inventory. Imagine working at a restaurant in one of these airports. You take the bus because you can't afford to park. You navigate this maze every day. And if there's a problem, a delay, a cancellation, you watch stressed travelers get angrier because there's no one to help them. This isn't just about comfort, it's about values. What we fund reveals what we care about, and American airports reveal we don't care much about the people using them. But we do care about security, or at least security theater. Let's talk about the Transportation Security Administration, created after September 11th to make flying safer, and instead made flying miserable while providing questionable actual security. Here's how you know it's theater. TSA fails its own tests repeatedly. In 2015, undercover investigators from the Department of Homeland Security tried to sneak fake weapons and explosives through checkpoints. They succeeded 95% of the time. 95%! But we still take off our shoes because one guy tried to hide explosives in his shoe in 2001. We throw away water bottles, we remove laptops, we get yelled at for having toothpaste in the wrong bag. All of it security theater, designed to look like we're doing something, not to actually work. International airports figured this out years ago. Many European airports use better technology, better training, and streamlined procedures that don't require shoe removal or laptop extraction. They're faster and more effective. American airports? We're stuck with protocols from 2002. Why? Because changing them requires admitting they don't work. And no politician wants to be accused of weakening airport security, even when the current system fails 95% of the time. So we waste billions on theater, billions that could modernize airports, improve actual security, or fund literally anything useful. But here's the truly insane part. TSA creates vulnerabilities. When you pack thousands of people into pre-security lines, you create a massive soft target. We've made airports less safe in the name of security. The logic is backwards. And all of this matters more than you think. Okay, so American airports are bad. Why does this matter beyond being annoying? Because airports are infrastructure. They're economic engines. A bad airport doesn't just frustrate travelers, it hurts business, damages tourism, and costs cities competitive advantage. When companies decide where to locate headquarters, airport quality matters. If your airport is a nightmare, talented people don't want to live there. When tourists choose destinations, they remember the airport. If it's terrible, they don't return. Cities compete globally now. If your airport looks like a 1975 bus station while your competitor has a state-of-the-art facility, you lose. Jobs go elsewhere. Conferences book other cities. Economic activity flows to places that invested in infrastructure. But this isn't about economics. It's about standards, about what we accept as good enough. We're the richest country in human history. We invented commercial aviation. We should have the best airports on Earth. Instead, we're getting lapped by countries that were developing nations a generation ago. This isn't because other countries are smarter or work harder. It's because they made different choices. They invested in infrastructure. They treated airports as national priorities. They maintained standards. We chose differently. We chose deferred maintenance and funding gimmicks. We chose to let airlines consolidate into monopolies. We chose to spend billions on security theater instead of functional improvements. We chose to treat airport workers and passengers as problems to be processed, rather than people to be served. All of these choices had reasons. Every decision made sense to someone at the time, but the cumulative effect is undeniable. American airports are worse than they were 20 years ago, and they're getting worse every year. But here's the thing about choices. You can make different ones. So what would it take to fix American airports? First, we need honest, consistent funding, not public-private partnership gimmicks, direct investment, tens of billions per year for decades, maintenance, modernization, expansion. It's not exciting, it won't win elections, but it's what works. Second, we need to break airline monopolies or regulate them like the utilities they've become. If Delta controls Atlanta, fine, but they shouldn't dictate terms. Airports need negotiating power to demand service standards and fair fees. Third, we need to reform TSA. Copy what works internationally. Better technology, better training, streamlined processes that are both faster and more effective than what we have now. Fourth, we need to remember that airports serve people, not just as passengers, but as workers, as economic anchors, as gateways to cities. Designed for humans, not just throughput. None of this is radical. We know how to build good airports. We've seen them around the world. We could copy what works. We just have to decide it matters enough to actually do it. American airports are getting worse. That's not opinion, it's measurable fact. Older facilities, worse service, longer waits, less reliability. We're falling further behind while other countries build the future. But this is fixable. The infrastructure exists to study. The funding mechanisms exist. The political will is the only missing ingredient. Because right now, we've decided that having bad airports is acceptable, that treating travelers like cattle is fine, that our gateway infrastructure can be second-rate while we claim to be first-rate nation. Every time you fly through an American airport, fighting through TSA, walking endless corridors, eating overpriced chain food while your flight gets delayed, remember, this is a choice. We chose this, and we can choose differently. So, here's my question. What's your worst airport story? Drop it in the comments. And tell me, which airport in America needs the most help? Because if we're going to fix this, we need to start somewhere. And the first step is admitting we have a problem. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.